the trouble on the markets today.
Yeah, all of the Asian shares have plunged in trading this Monday. This the latest in a chain of events that actually started last Thursday when China reported that its manufacturing output could shrink in January. Now, that's prompted renewed fears of the fate of the world's second largest economy, whether another slowdown is on the way. On top of that, Japan posted a record commercial deficit for last year. This is the difference between the value of its imports and its exports. That was $112 billion, largely because of the falling value of the yen and the increase in energy imports needed by Japan. That sent the Nikkei down 2.5%, but as you can see, a fairly depressing picture across the Asian markets there.
Now, here in Europe, there's been much speculation over what ECB bank stress tests will reveal about the state of the European banking sector.
Yes, how stressed are our banks, and will they be able to cope with future, I suppose, financial crises? That was the subject of one of the debates in the World Economic Forum in Davos. The European Central Bank is carrying out a review of 130 of the Eurozone's biggest banks ahead of taking over as its banking supervisor in November. The previous stress tests carried out weren't thought to be terribly credible because the majority of lenders actually passed them. But speaking at this special Franz van Gett debate in Davos, the head of the Eurogroup, Jeroen Dijsselbloem, said that it would be a good thing if some banks failed the test.
I rather hope that it's going to unveil some unpleasantness, because that would give me a good feeling that it's been done properly. And I think this is key. We're not doing this to cover up and at the end of the day say, oh, everything's fine now. We're doing this to find out what problems remain and then to deal with them.
It's going to be a huge step forward in terms of establishing transparency and creating trust. But we still aren't where we should be. 3/4 of credit formation in Europe happens via banks, not capital markets. And the banks are not in a position to create capital at the pace where they were.
Anusha Jain from Deutsche Bank there. Let's move on with a look at some of the day's other companies' news. And Google has signed a deal with Samsung, which will bring their alliance closer, helping them to use each other's patented products. The agreement applies to both existing and future technologies, including Google's Android mobile operating system. The idea is to avoid costly litigation in the future, like that which Samsung is currently embroiled in with its rival Apple. The number of profit warnings from major British companies has reached the highest level since 2008. A study from the professional services group EY shows that 31 firms warned of lower earnings in the last 3 months of 2013. Retailer Debenhams and the insurance group RSA were among the companies who announced their profits were on the way down. And the French department store Galeries Lafayette has abandoned plans to buy the UK retailer House of Fraser. The two had been in talks since last month. Galeries Lafayette executive Nicolas Houzet confirmed the deal was off in an interview with the French newspaper Les Echos. He said that the company's management would also be set for an overhaul.
Next, Stephen, I must admit I've heard this rumor several times. A new study says that Facebook could be heading for terminal decline.
Yeah, it seems quite unlikely. It has over 1 billion users, but one study from Princeton University said that it could lose up to 80% of them by 2017. Now, the study was based on comparing Facebook's trajectory with that of MySpace. Unsurprisingly, Facebook have disputed their findings. I'll tell you in a moment what they said. But first, Catherine Spencer explains how the researchers came to their conclusions.
With more than 1 billion users and an estimated value of $137 billion, Facebook has enjoyed a meteoric rise. But according to a new study from America's Princeton University, the popular social networking site could face sudden death. Researchers using diseases to illustrate the life cycles of social media say Facebook is like a virus infecting people all over the world before abruptly dying out, like its predecessor MySpace. They predict that Facebook could lose 80% of its users by 2017.
If a social network doesn't continue to spread like a virus, it will die out, and that is what is at stake for Facebook. Today, it resembles the same virus that it did 5 or 10 years ago, whereas Google, for example, is constantly developing. Google has managed to continue spreading by developing new applications, Gmail sites, a car, Google Glasses, while Facebook remains just a social network.
The main way that Facebook's changed over the past decade is through its users, who are getting older and older. There's been a sharp rise in the number of over 55s flocking to the site, and that's putting off the next generation of internet users. It's time for Facebook to change or die.
Now, Facebook responded to that research by saying that it was based on the number of times people Googled Facebook. However, most of their business is done through mobile. They produced their own research paper in response, showing at how many times Google has been Princeton has been looked up on Google. It says, using the researchers' logic, the trend suggests that Princeton will only have half of its current students by 2018 and none at all by 2021. Slightly more worrying, Facebook also says that if you apply the same logic to Googling the word air, that's also been declining steadily, and by their projections, there'll be no air left by 2060. So perhaps some back to the drawing board for some of that research.
A frightening prospect. Thank you very much, Stephen Carroll, for our business news. Now it's time for web news, starting with ongoing protests in Ukraine.